Hello again. Happy Saturday. What I would like to talk about today is the yoga of Henry David Thoreau, particularly one aspect of yoga that I extrapolated from the book Walden what I read at a very young age. So, there's this part in the book Walden in which Henry David Thoreau is conversing with a farmer and essentially talking about sort of the nature. He's extrapolating from the farmer, like the nature of like his life cycle, like how he is living his life. And as he's learning this, he learns as well that there's a kind of cycle that can kind of come about from people who engage in a lot of laboring a lot to accumulate the money needed to purchase the resources they need. And he makes a note in kind of understanding that the extent of efforts that is put into accumulating the money needed to sustain you with resources also has an adverse effect of requiring you to purchase more resources to sustain yourself, to have the money necessary. So it's and he makes a note of you can actually limit, you can cut down this sort of struggle by understanding the idea of sustaining yourself through simple means. And so, specifically, within the context of this situation that Henry David Thoreau talks about in Walden, he is talking with the farmer, and the farmer is mentioning how he is working really hard to produce so many crops, as many crops as possible. And that's kind of like, that is probably the number one driving force of the United States economy at this time in history. Most people were farmers in the 1800s. And so the farmer is working really hard to produce a lot of crops, to sell these crops for a profit. And then the idea is to get so much profit that he will be able to purchase greater lands and have more, to have, greater establishments at his disposal. But one thing that is also interesting to make a note of within this process of laboring to produce more crops, to sell for more profit, is that a lot of your budget actually goes into replenishing yourself from all of the hard work that you are doing, all the strenuous work you are doing. He has to make a lot of money, and he has to buy, very practically speaking, he has to buy a lot of food to feed himself so he can keep working hard to make more money. And you can kind of see how this sort of cycle, this cycle, you should understand. You should really question yourself when you're in a cycle such as this, or when you're observing a cycle such as this, is that do the ends justify the means? Also as well, and this is something that's a very contemporary issue too, you have to factor in that the hard work you do to accumulate resources, now, not only do you have to purchase more resources to sustain yourself in order to keep doing this hard work, you also have to understand the certain stresses that go about as a result of this, and the adverse health conditions that may become over time as a result of these stresses. And in this particular day and age, especially in America, the financial burden that one can go under from health conditions that come from overstrenuous work over a long period of time, financially, it's almost kind of ridiculous how imbalanced the financial burden could be under certain health conditions, as a result of a lifetime of laboring extremely hard to accumulate profits. And this is meant to kind of give point to the idea of understanding the balance. You have to understand the amount of work you need to do to sustain yourself. You have to understand the simplicity of living, of your living situation, to sustain your base needs and have leisure time and have a good place for reflection and protection. And you have to understand how much you need to do to keep this environment, but also not striving too hard to go beyond this to the extent where you have to spend more money to keep yourself healthy as a result, and have to work harder to get this money to keep yourself healthy. And so you have to understand, you have to be within the right cycle. What he was observing within the context of this American farmer in the late 1800s, or maybe mid 1800s perhaps, was that the cycle he was doing was working really hard to get the profit needed in order to purchase more resources needed to sustain himself, and always like pushing himself to the limit of his capacity at the time. And you want to you want you know we you know you want to see this cycle, and you need to question yourself when you're in these cycles, saying, do my ends justify the means? And you want to use your intelligence. And this is the yoga right here. You could probably surmise this yoga as the yoga of Henry David Thoreau is using your intelligence to balance the simplicity of your life cycle for the maximum amount of happiness and leisure. And so, with this being said, it's important to examine your life and understand what you need to do to sustain yourself. And does what you do to sustain yourself, does the result of that um, reciprocate enough to your health and happiness, where your methods justify the result? And if you notice that, and if you want to make a change as well, it's important to do so gradually too, and to make small steps here and there, and understand that where you are in life is a result of choices that you have made up until that point. And these choices are numerous and have happened over a long period of time. And so, in order to redirect yourself, if the best you are able to, it is important to make counter choices with your intelligence towards a direction that's more conducive to the maximum amount of happiness and leisure from the result as a result of the actions that you are doing. So yeah, the enjoy the yoga of Henry David Thoreau, and I'll talk with you soon.